Meta, I still call them Facebook, just announced they're going to reduce their workforce by 3,000 people. You think that'll be the end of Meta?
I imagine it will not.
Yeah. Think maybe the people at Meta know what they're doing?
I think that they do. They make a lot of money, Senator.
Do you hate NIH?
I love NIH. I grew up with NIH. I visited when I was a boy. I loved science, and those were my favorite afternoons, visiting the labs at NIH.
Do you hate medical research?
No, I think we need to lead the world in medical research in this country.
In fact, isn't it true, Mr. Secretary, that you would like to see more money spent on medical research?
Obviously, I'm the secretary of this department. No secretary wants to see his budget cut.
Well, one way of doing that, it seems to me, would be to stop some of the stealing. And let me tell you what I mean by that.
What you just watched is classic Senator John Kennedy. Calm, sharp, and completely in control of the facts. Welcome back to Congress Lens. I'm Audrey. Today's hearing clip shows Senator John Kennedy questioning HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about government downsizing, NIH grant spending, and fraud in federal assistance programs. And in my honest opinion, Senator John Kennedy came prepared with receipts, not just talking points. When Senator John Kennedy compared HHS workforce cuts to Microsoft and Meta reducing their staff, that was not random. It was deliberate. He was challenging the idea that restructuring automatically means disaster. Then he shifted into NIH indirect costs and grant misuse, and that is where the tension really rose. And I think that conversation needed to happen. If you believe government accountability matters no matter who is in power, like this video, subscribe to Congress Lens, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it.
Mr. Secretary, how many employees were there at HHS when you took over?
82,000.
How many do you have today?
62,000.
Okay.
It's about the level it was in 2019, right before COVID.
Is this the first time that an institution in America has ever downsized?
I don't think so. I think private and public institutions have historically.
Microsoft just announced that they were going to reduce their workforce by 6,000 people. You think that'll be the end of Microsoft?
Senator, we wouldn't have reduced anybody.
You think that'll be the end of Microsoft?
I don't think so, Senator.
Meta, I still call them Facebook, just announced they're going to reduce their workforce by 3,000 people. You think that'll be the end of Meta?
I imagine it will not.
Yeah. Think maybe the people at Meta know what they're doing?
I think that they do. They make a lot of money, Senator.
Do you hate NIH?
I love NIH. I grew up with NIH. I visited when I was a boy. I loved science, and those were my favorite afternoons, visiting the labs at NIH.
Do you hate medical research?
No, I think we need to lead the world in medical research in this country.
In fact, isn't it true, Mr. Secretary, that you would like to see more money spent on medical research?
Obviously, I'm the secretary of this department. No secretary wants to see his budget cut.
Well, one way of doing that, it seems to me, would be to stop some of the stealing. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Let's suppose you give NIH gives a university $100 million to research, for medical research, to research a cure. And that university takes $30 million of it, doesn't spend it on the research. They use it to subsidize the rest of their university. Does that show a commitment to medical research?
No, and I mentioned before the example of Stanford, which was taking 78% in indirect costs, and we don't know what they were spending.
That's theft, isn't it?
It's not a good
in
way to
Louisiana,
spend
we call
federal
that stealing.
Taxpayer dollars.
We call that stealing. Is there any doubt in your mind that a lot of universities are taking this NIH money, which is supposed to be spent on medical research, and using it to fund other parts of their university. Is there any doubt in your mind, Bobby?
Oh, and Senator, the other people who are writing grants, like the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, they paid 10% to 15% in indirect costs. We were paying 50, 60, 70%.
So, in fact, what you're doing is adding money to medical research.
We will be able to fund many, many, many more studies by eliminating that $9 billion, at least part of that $9 billion cost.
Okay. I want to ask you about LIHEAP. Are you familiar with this GAO report they did on LIHEAP? LIHEAP?
I am not, Senator.
They found, they audited 7 states. They found 11,000 dead people getting LIHEAP grants. You familiar with that?
No, but that is pretty typical of many of the other programs that we're working with.
They found prisoners getting grants, didn't they? Were they using the grants to heat their jail cell? They found 1,000 federal employees getting the grants with federal salaries that greatly exceeded the income limits. They found some of those folks living in $1 million homes. I got 18 seconds. Why do we allow highly processed foods in America?
That's a complicated question, but it's driven by profits to a food industry that is making money by poisoning American kids, and they don't do it abroad. They make the same products for Canada and for Europe that do not contain many of those chemicals.
You understand, Mr. Secretary, there's nothing you can do that's going to make many of my Democratic colleagues happy. You get that, don't you?
I do understand. I'm coming to understand that, Senator.
Yes. Thank you.
After watching the full exchange, I will say this clearly. Senator John Kennedy controlled that room. Let's start with the workforce reduction at HHS. The numbers went from 82,000 employees to 62,000. Senator John Kennedy asked a straightforward question. Is this unprecedented? Microsoft cut 6,000 workers. Meta cut 3,000. Private companies restructure all the time. His point was simple. Downsizing does not automatically mean collapse. It can mean recalibration. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did not really push back strongly on that comparison. Then we get into NIH funding, and this is where things became more serious. Senator John Kennedy raised concerns about indirect costs. When a university receives $100 million for medical research but keeps a large percentage for administrative expenses or other institutional costs, that deserves scrutiny. The example mentioned about Stanford taking 78% in indirect costs is significant. Senator John Kennedy called it stealing. That word carries weight, but the concern behind it is clear. Taxpayer dollars meant for medical research should go toward medical research. When private foundations like the Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation operate with much lower indirect cost rates, it raises a fair question. Why is the federal government paying so much more? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. acknowledged that the system could use reform, which is important. Now let's talk about the GAO audit of LIHEAP that Senator John Kennedy referenced. According to the audit, thousands of deceased individuals were receiving benefits. Prisoners were reportedly receiving grants. Some federal employees with salaries above income limits were also receiving assistance, and a few allegedly lived in million-dollar homes. If those findings are accurate, that is not a small oversight issue. That points to deeper accountability problems. Senator John Kennedy's comment about prisoners using heating grants for jail cells was sharp, but it highlighted how unreasonable that situation sounds. Holding social programs accountable does not mean opposing them. It means protecting their integrity so they actually serve the people they were designed to help. The discussion later shifted to highly processed foods. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. argued that some American food companies use ingredients domestically that they do not use in Canada or Europe. That is a serious concern. But throughout the hearing, Senator John Kennedy kept bringing the focus back to oversight, spending, and management. And then there was the political moment. When Senator John Kennedy told Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that some Democratic colleagues would oppose him no matter what he does, it felt like a candid acknowledgement of today's political climate. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. admitted he is starting to understand that reality. My overall takeaway is this. Senator John Kennedy was not there to perform. He was there to question how taxpayer money is being spent, whether systems are being abused, and whether oversight is strong enough. You may not agree with every word or every tone choice, but demanding transparency and efficiency from federal agencies is part of Congress's responsibility. In this hearing, Senator John Kennedy looked prepared, focused, and confident. That is my perspective. Now I want to hear yours.